Hi, I'm Blake Rayhans.
And I'm Stacie Mallon.
And you are listening to the Optimized AF podcast.
We know life is hard. We're here to make it simple.
Hello there, everybody. I am Blake Rayhans. Welcome to the Optimized AF podcast. I'm getting an odd look from my co-host.
I'm just thinking.
I'm going through the intro, and
about?
I'm trying to get hyped up for this thing. We got this nice,
hyped.
Nice drum beat, and I'm air drumming it.
Yes, he's hype. He's hype today.
Is that getting hype or getting woke or not the same thing? I don't know. I'm not. I'm certainly not.
You're not woke?
Hip to that definition.
And I'm Stacie Mallon, and welcome to the Optimized AF podcast. And this is one of the episodes that it's just Blake and I, so we hope you still enjoy.
Don't tune out.
Enjoy. We're just back to us.
Yeah.
Where there's no guest today.
Ouch.
We wanted to talk today about what is optimized. What does that mean for each of us? So I don't think this. I mean, I don't want to say it's not going to be a longer episode, but we just wanted to boil down for each of us what that means for us. We were having a little bit of a conversation prior to hitting record, interesting about working on yourself and taking us back to being in our 20s and how much motivation did we have to work on ourselves back then versus now. And then what are the factors that play into optimizing your life? And what caused you or me to say, this is something that I want to show up as a better person. I want to try to make the most of my life. And I think both of us have, so we'll probably dive a little bit into our personal stories here today. And we both have different motivations, but some overlap as to why this is important for us. And so I don't know if I don't know who's starting, but
I touched on it on an earlier episode. We talked about this idea of optimization, and that's what led us to the topic today. And I hope with you listening to this episode, we'll give you more of a perspective on what we feel as a connection to that word, because optimization has a tendency to sort of, I would imagine some people hear that and they don't even start. It's like, optimization seems a little too grand, a little too out there, a little too perfect. Nothing's perfect. Nothing goes to plan. I try to do this thing and then it falls apart. And this optimization, you guys are talking a lot of crap and it doesn't actually work for real people. So I wanted to come on here and we wanted to share sort of how we really felt about it. And what I said on an earlier episode, and this is my take on optimization, is I use the word, it's a farce. It's not really an end game. It's not an end, a goal line. It's not an outcome. It is an evolution. And for me, it is a mindset. So we're always able to improve. That's how I feel, my opinion. We always are able to improve. We're always able to evolve and do better. And the idea is that if you approach every single day saying, how can I do something today better than I did it yesterday? And there's an idea out there called like the 1% improvement. You just improve 1% every single day. That is, again, it's a mindset. It's how you approach things. It's how you approach your relationships. How am I going to be 1% better at engaging with my wife today? Hey, you know what? Yesterday morning, maybe I don't know, it was a little too rushed, right? We got the two little ones. Everybody's trying to get out the door to go to work, to go to school, and there wasn't a connection. It was like hey, have a nice day, hun, love you, bye. That's it. How can I be 1% better at that? How can I be 1% better with the kids? Obviously, anybody who's listening who has little kids, they're not going to do what you tell them to do. They're not going to do it the first time. Guess what?
Kidding me.
They're not going to do it the fifth time.
By the way, if you have teenagers,
it doesn't stop. And
nope.
So how do I be 1% better today than I did yesterday with an interaction with the kids? And if you just approach life in that way, that's where optimization comes into me, is I'm optimizing it. But again, if you're picking up on some of the words that I'm saying, I'm very, very much personalizing it to me. I'm going to take tips and tricks and tools and things that I see out in the I'll call it marketplace with my air quotes if you're watching us on YouTube. But if I see something, I'll say, okay, how can I make that work for me? Maybe I need to tweak it a little bit. Maybe I'll do exactly what that person did. But if you don't personalize it for yourself, then you're not optimizing. You're just existing.
Yeah.
Right.
There's a few aspects for me. One is trying things out of your comfort zone. So optimize to me means what is the path to get you just, again, 1% or a little bit better every day. That has really been a journey for me in trying things out of my comfort zone. And I am a person who really likes to be good at things. So when I was younger, I didn't try a lot of new things because it was just easier for me to continue to, even if it was a workout. So let me give you an example. I've taught fitness for a long time. A lot of fitness instructors don't go to other fitness instructors' classes because you're now not the expert in the room, someone else is. And I think that can feel very challenging. And so let's take a dance format class. Well, when you're the instructor, you know all the steps perfectly. So it feels good and you're the one leading. When you go to someone else's class, and this is just a metaphor for life as well, when someone else is leading, you don't know all the steps. So it can be uncomfortable as a dance instructor to go to somebody else's dance class because you're just with everybody else. All the students know you're an instructor, so there feels like there's an expectation that you're going to show up. But as I started doing more and more of that, going to different instructors' classes, and it helped me learn and grow in a different way. It helped me show up in an even better way for my students. I learned a lot. I connected with other people, with other instructors and other students. Got me out of my comfort zone for sure. And also, it was just a lot of lesson around sometimes for people that like to feel like they're in control and feel like things have to be a certain way, that you gotta kind of let that go sometimes.
Yeah. Well, isn't it so true though that when you step outside your comfort zone, that's when growth happens. Mm-hmm. If you're always doing the comfortable stuff, if you're always playing it safe, you're not really going to have a great chance of improving or growing or evolving or optimizing in whatever aspect you want to. Now, there's also a very purposeful and intentional piece to this is you have to want it. I think we were talking before, like you said, before we hit the record button on this episode about how we've both engaged with and interacted with people in our lives that sort of bounce in life, just haphazardly, unintentionally, almost by accident. They navigate this life that they have, and we all have the same.
They bump through life.
They bump through life,
kind of unaware.
Yeah, say that. You can almost say that out loud, listen to it, and then it just makes you sad. Yeah. Like, how sad is that to say?
Although some days I'd like to have days where I'm not aware.
Blissfully ignorant to everything.
Is a thing.
Here's the thing, though. That is a very intentional thing you can give to yourself, though. I've done that to myself, where I've intentionally given myself about, say once a quarter, once every few months, I give myself a day, and I literally plan 0 things for that day, other than to just spend time with myself, doing whatever comes up. Might even just go have breakfast by myself, go watch a movie by myself, go take a walk, doesn't matter. But I'm being purposeful in being blissfully ignorant to an agenda or who I'm going to interact with or whatever the case may be. I just think that if, my opinion is if you can be more intentional about how you live your life, and not just let it kind of happen to you, then to your own definition, you're optimizing your experience that we call life. The human experience can happen to you, or you can take you can take control of it.
Yeah, one thing that I think we've talked about before, but I'll emphasize again, is you also have to know where you want to go and what you want, and identify what are the things in life that feel the best so you can fill more space with those things. That to me is optimizing as well. So if you identify that this part of your work, let's take this podcast as a great example. Blake and I love to have conversations with people. We love to learn new things. We loved connecting with each other. We enjoyed sharing content with people. So we identified that this would be a good way to spend some of our time because it really fired on a lot of the cylinders of the things that we really enjoyed doing. And again, lit us up from the inside. Like this feels good to us. And for us, I think it's sharing not just our story, but other people's stories and how they've had an impact, and the guests we've had on so far. It's understanding and hearing from the people listening to this podcast of how they're applying those things in very tangible, simple ways. And then also, we're here for ourselves. We always do things selfishly. I learn a lot every time we're on, every time we record, every time we're here. I take something away for myself, for my own life. And every guest or even every interaction we have, even on the way, we LinkedIn Live on the way over here. And I learn a lot every single time. And that Blake likes to sing, so do I.
Yeah, but you also learn that I can't carry a tune.
Me either. So good luck digesting that on LinkedIn. So it is something that my grandfather used to say, I aspire to inspire until I expire. So put that in your... The fact that I remembered that.
Say it 5 times fast.
So he had that on his refrigerator, no kidding, for 20 years. And so I grew up with him. And so optimization was really like an everyday mantra for him. He really he aspired to inspire everybody in every interaction that he had. And he wanted to do so in a way that felt good to that person, but also helped him be motivated about himself in life. And I know I talk about him a lot, but he was just this incredibly positive person that made every situation, it was like, well, you can spend time complaining about this or we can get it done. And you can also, by the way, change your mindset. I remember I was raking leaves one time. For those of you in the Midwest, you feel my pain. I was raking leaves and I was a teenager. I was pissed off at the world that this is what I was spending my time doing. And he reminded me of not only can you piss and moan about this and make it worse on yourself, or like what's an aspect of this that could actually feel really good and could be good for you, or how can you shift your mindset? And that's not what he said. He said it a little bit different, but that's what he meant. And so I think I've spent a lot of my life understanding and trying to understand how do you make the most of every situation and every opportunity. And we've had guests on and everybody has said the same thing. First of all, you're never perfect at that. Second of all, give yourself grace when you're not. So if you're trying to optimize something in your life, give yourself the grace. I think a lot of people try to optimize something. Let's take, we always go back to fitness as the easiest example, or diet or whatever, because it's almost everybody's had that experience. People slide off the rails and they say, okay, well, that's done. That's over with. And the reality is it's, progress looks like the wavy line, right? It's 2 steps forward and 1 step back and sideways and upside down. So I would say optimization to me is about directional progress. To your point, Blake, there's no finish line. It's always constant improvement, which can feel exhausting. That's like you said, you have that day where you're like
progress over perfection. And there's something I think it's conditioned in us probably early on in our lives about having a finite mindset. It has to have a finish line. I have to complete the grade. I have to take the test. There's always this something to get to, and then it's quote unquote it's over, whatever the quote it is. And you have to sort of make an intentional piece. I love what you said there of trying to always find the piece of every interaction, of every situation where I can take something positive away from it. I can learn something here. I hating the fact that I'm raking leaves right now, but I can learn something from this. I can take part of it and make it benefit me. But there's this shift of having a finite mindset or having an infinite mindset, and a mindset of abundance. Those things in and of themselves have this growth aspect to them and this progress aspect to them. And I think it's Tony Robbins or somebody, in that personal development space talks about how, the key to life is progress. If you're just progressing, then you're going to find happiness. Other elements play a part, obviously doing something you love, find your passion, your purpose, all these things, but you have to improve, you have to progress in some aspect, and that's growth. And I think I don't really know if I can pinpoint a time in my life where it really hit home for me. But I can say that through hardship and struggle, you have really two options. You can play the victim, and you can get really, really deep into a spiral of this thing happened to me and woe is me and I'm a victim, and that just takes you into a dark place. Or you can learn something from it, and you can learn something from it. You can apply it to going forward. And I think, just probably the positivity of my dad was the biggest factor. I think just through being around him and osmosis, like we were, outside looking in, you'd look at some of the hardships and be like, okay, well, at one point in our life, we were homeless. We lived out of a tent at a KOA campsite north of Phoenix here in Arizona. For a short period of time, we lived out of a motel room. Okay. And I was going to school out of both of those situations as a young child. We moved, often. I was, constantly having to navigate being the new kid. And fast forward through many other ups and downs and things. But at 14 years old, I was going to high school and I was living by myself. And I remember that very distinctly because I was in my hometown in Iowa. I had a vastly larger group of people that sort of had already written it off as a bad thing, and this kid's not going to do anything with his life, and it would be nothing but bad. And I had a much smaller group of people that, for whatever reason, believed. And that was, I feel like naturally in that experience, I kind of found a place where no matter what the situation was, I was going to make the most of it. I was going to make the best out of that situation. I think that actually goes back to early childhood, but I definitely applied it. And just because it's those teenage years, I think there's a lot of things going on there that you just sort of have more memories really take deep root, in your brain. I just remember applying it more. I remember really going into situations of like, how can I make the most of this? How can I be the best at what I'm doing? How can I do this? Or how can I, and it wasn't about making that large group of people wrong. It was never about that. Actually, I don't remember one time ever saying, I got to prove something. I think if anything, it was more like, I just have to show up. I know the type of person that I want to be. And that's who I need to, that's how I optimize my day. That's how I go into situations. That's how I apply the things that I've learned, was I just wanted to be the person that I wanted to be.
Yep. And I think when you show up like that, like everything changes. And for my own story, I transferred to a college in my sophomore year, and I was working 3 jobs and going to school. I had a partial ride, Butler University, and
shout out Bulldogs.
Yes, hashtag Bulldogs. Come on, basketball this year. It's the only thing we're good at is basketball, by the way, and creating pharmacists and dancers and other kind of language arts folks. But small university, I went there, and I was working 3 jobs. I was teaching fitness. I was running a medical office. How anybody gave me that job, I have no idea. I didn't know what I was doing. And sometimes working in the ER. And then I was waiting tables. So I had 3 jobs. And like you, I was really kind of independent by the time I was 16. And I was working since I was 14. And I remember I went in front of a panel for a scholarship that one of my professors just gave me the key to the lab and told me to go in whenever I could to get my labs done because I was working all the time and my degree's in chemistry. So there's a lot of lab time. And so I'd go in there at night and do what I needed to do sometimes. He nominated me for the scholarship. And I remember there's a woman on this panel and she looked at me and said, if you get this scholarship, you need to commit to me. You'll quit one of your jobs. And I was like, ooh, like what? How am I going to do that? And I think I was embarrassed because I felt very seen by her and I wasn't used to being seen. I think she just, I was showing up. I wasn't making excuses or apologizing. I wasn't there in my mind telling a sob story. I was like, this is what I'm doing. This is my life, and I think because I showed up in that way, I ended up getting that scholarship, which essentially gave me a full ride for the rest of till I graduated and with my degree. And it takes one person. I'll say that I something that I've said every day is whose life can I change or help or inspire today? Is there one person? Sometimes it's my kids. Sometimes it's, my spouse. Sometimes it's a friend, but it comes to mind every single morning for me. That's an optimized practice I think I've really internalized is how can I help one person today and be grateful for that opportunity.
Yeah.
And I think it comes from several people, and both of us having, challenging stories growing up. Someone showed up for us. You had people that were rooting for you. Mm-hmm. I had people rooting for me. I had coaches and teachers and counselors and parents, other parents, and just kind of intercede in my life, and bump me kind of back into center when maybe I was kind of straggling outside of the line. Yeah. And I think that I'm so grateful for, Mrs. Clenny, who was my high school counselor, and Sindra Meyer, who was my English teacher. And these are all in high school where I was having a really challenging time. There were just adults that showed up for me that didn't have to. And I think about that every day when I wake up, like, where would I be? And it's some of it's personal motivation. Some of it was me believing in myself. But I will say it's taken me into my 40s, when you talk about optimizing, to really have a lot of self-belief. I think when you grow up and it's challenging, you spend a lot of time in your 20s and some of your 30s, maybe all of your 30s, fighting, believing your worth. And that affects how you show up in every possible way in your life. So I think for me, optimization, the practices that I optimize, that I focus on are gratitude. You mentioned abundance. That's a big one for me. I think making the most of every day, changing someone or interceding in some way, shape, or form in any way possible that I can. You mentioned a practice you had of going off the grid like once a quarter. I remember when I had little kids, I used to take the day off of work and not tell anybody because so moms out there and dads maybe, because my spouse at the time would fill my day up with stuff if I were like, hey, I'm taking the day off. So I didn't tell anybody. I took the day off of work and my kids didn't know, he didn't know. I went off the grid and I would just walk around Target and touch things if I wanted to. It didn't really matter. I just wanted to just bump along in life for one day. So I think that is a good practice. Honestly, when you're talking about optimizing your life, it is okay to disconnect. I think that's also why meditation has become such a big topic of conversation. That is really that practice, is grounding in yourself. And I'll be honest, I'm still not good at it. I still work on it I wish I could say every single day. I'm not even good at doing it every single day. It's something that I'm working on. It's something that I want to get better at. But I do think there is that practice of finding grounding and finding space in yourself and setting time aside and prioritizing yourself. Like you said, you do like once a quarter. Mm-hmm. But if you do that on the daily, I think it's a very powerful mechanism.
Yeah. The one thing you said in there, I want to go back to for our listeners, is the idea of abundance, because I don't think that one gets it doesn't get talked about as much as some of the others in terms of mindset or growth or meditation or gratitude. But abundance, the idea behind that is that you can be really happy for someone else's success, because guess what? The success is not capped off in this world. You can look at somebody that's doing exactly what you want to do with your life, and they're doing it, and they're getting great, revenue for their business. They're doing whatever, and you can be really excited and happy for them because you know that their success does not diminish or take away from your ability to be just as successful, if not more. That's the idea of abundance. There was one thing I do want to I want to notate, just for probably just even for me, because I want to call out an experience. You mentioned the people that believed, in you, and when I go back to those years in high school, there's one particular individual that, for all the people who were the naysayers, there was someone to counterbalance, but there was one particular situation that I want to call out because it was very profound for me. Obviously, this many years later, 20 I don't know, years later, 2 decades, but it was after senior graduation, and I remember having a mom to my best friend in high school come up to me and really sincerely say, thank you for being my son's friend. because of the example that you said. I mean, think about it, like 14-year-old grocery shopping, right? 14-year-old holding down a part-time job during high school, cooking and cleaning and maintaining your house, all those things. And she had in this just really short statement was like, making sure you woke up yourself in the morning and went, that you did the work, that you did this, and, to graduate in the top 5 or 10% of the class, whatever it was. She's like, I think you just really were a great example. And I look back and I thought, at no point in the last 4 years did I ever feel like I was an example for her son. We were just friends. We were just buddies. And I never really saw that there was like anything that I was doing that was rubbing off on him. But for her to say that, I think was really profound for me, because then I realized going forward that, to your grandfather's point, you have the ability to inspire, you have the ability to impact, even when you're not trying to, because of how you show up and how people observe you. You can give someone an idea of saying, hey, look, maybe I can do something like that. Maybe I can overcome that obstacle because I've seen someone now who's been able to overcome that particular situation. And I myself am now going through that. And so I'm inspired that it's possible. And I'm also educated because I can see some very practical things to do. So for our listeners, I think from that, I just really encourage you to pause for a moment today and just remember that you really do have the ability to inspire others without intentional action with that person, by just focusing on yourself. But the part that has to come back to, right, is there are going to be naysayers, and you have to be able to navigate that and really be confident in the person that you want to be. We were talking prior to the show with our producer, Nick, and talking about how we navigate the people in this world in and out of our lives at certain seasons, was the word you used, Stacie. And I think that's so true, because there's people who bring value to us, and then there's people who are in our circles that just sort of are there. And you do have to sort of bring people in and out, keep some at arm's length, because they're not going to want to see you elevate. They're not going to want to see you optimize. And one of the things I wanted to say this too is optimization, evolution, improvement, growth. All these things have this forward-looking progress. I'll use the word addition, sort of a thing to it. I have to add something. I have to do something more, right? Here's what I want to offer to people as a perspective is, now think about discipline. Discipline is such an incredible way to optimize your life, but discipline has this way of being negative. I'm stripping things away from myself. I'm not doing these things. I'm being very rigid and I have a rigor instilled in what I do and don't do. It, if you grew up, discipline obviously it has a different, I'm not talking about discipline from like you're getting punished because you didn't. I'm talking discipline about self-discipline. Thank you, Stacie. Yeah. So think about optimization that way. For me, optimization really comes out of the behavior of disciplining yourself to certain things that bring you value, and then eliminating the things that don't. And through discipline, you can really, really have an optimized or improved growth situation.
And we'll say this to kind of lead into the next episode. One thing that I attempt, not perfect by any stretch of the imagination, especially with masks right now and everything else going on, try to enter into conversations and situations and interactions with light and love, honestly. And that people are gonna be like, that's a little woo-woo, but I mean that, I try to enter into every situation, even if it's somebody I don't even know, with light and love, because I think personally, had those people in my life not done that for me, my outcome would have been completely different. And we're having a guest on next week. The podcast will drop next week, that is going to talk about how do you do that? What's a mindset that you can shift to have interactions where there's more light, love, wonder, and inspiration in every interaction that you have. And he's going to talk about how he optimizes that in his own life and through a metaphor. And it's a very powerful way to think about it. Again, people may be shaking their heads. Yes, I want to do that. That sounds like a good idea. Or maybe you think it's totally stupid. I don't know. But, there's a saying that every time you walk into a room with your children, if you if you demonstrate to them how excited and amazing it is to see them and interact with them every single time, like that what that translates to your own children is just everything, and that's hard. That's hard some days when you have teenagers, especially who are cantankerous on a, regular basis. So, more light and love. And so that leads into hopefully you reaching next week to the podcast with Scott Peoples, who is our guest, and learn a little bit more how to optimize that aspect of your life.
And that's a great point, Stacie, because I know I'll speak for myself, and I know you may relate. I've made plenty of mistakes. More than I can count. Going back to those early years, I talked, on this episode about the teenage years. Made plenty of mistakes. I was not perfect. It was not it was not a sunshine and rainbows situation all the time. And so if you're finding yourself in a situation where shit's just not going right, guess what? You're not alone. Okay. And then just I hate to say it this way, but you buckle up. Pull up the, what do they say?
Put in your big girl pants or big boy pants.
Yeah, you put the big boy pants on, put the big girl pants on. But here's the point that I'm trying to make is none of this is a one and done. We talked about the theme of optimization. It is an evolution. It's a journey. It is about being 1% better every day. So as we cap off this episode and we leave you all with something that you can go and take and do, I think I want to really encourage you to, one, to Stacie's point leading into next week's episode, think about how you can optimize the interactions that you have with people, whether it be your teenagers, whether it be your coworkers, whether it be your spouse,
on
whatever.
a Zoom call, in person,
doesn't matter,
at the Target, when Karen cuts the line, whatever interaction you're talking about.
But just how can you make those a little bit better? And I think that's a great place to just have people think right now. The light and love, like you said, just, it seems a little foo-foo. It's not. It really isn't. You're not going to be perfect every time doing it, but I think if you even just have that seed planted in your head and you take that into these interactions, the world's a better place. And you're gonna interact with people that don't share the same belief.
Yeah, and that's okay. Their reaction is not yours to own, and also that's about them and not you. So if I feel like if we can leave you with anything, it's just go into this next week with more light, more love, and more optimism. And again, things aren't perfect right now with everything that's going on in the world, but your world is your own making. So with that, we wish you a phenomenal rest of this week and next, and then we will see you again next week.
Take care, everybody.
Hey guys, thanks for listening to our show. You can find Blake and I on social media channels at Blake Rayhans and at Stacie Mallon.
Be sure to follow Optimized AF on Instagram and rate and subscribe to this podcast on iTunes. See you next time.